in the warm heart of the African village called Indaloo, where red soil painted the ground and the river Kunu sang softly beneath the sun, lived a widow named Mama Loma with her 2 daughters, Tandy and Zola. Their home was small, built from mud and straw, but filled with laughter, song, and the smell of roasted yams. Tandy, the elder, was proud and sharp-tongued, always chasing admiration, while Zola, the younger, was gentle and kind-hearted, her beauty glowing like morning light upon the river. The villagers adored Zola, calling her the child of the river spirits, for her face carried peace and her smile healed sadness like rain after drought. But every word of praise for Zola was like a thorn pressing deeper into Tandy's heart. She watched as people offered her sister fruit, beads, and blessings, while she stood in the shadow unseen and unpraised. Envy slowly curled its fingers around her soul. One morning, as the sisters walked to the river with their clay pots balanced on their heads, Tandy noticed how every man's eyes followed Zola, how even the children called her name with joy. Her jaw tightened. "You walk as if the ground belongs to you," she hissed. Zola blinked, confused. "Sister, why do you speak so?" But Tandy turned away, her heart already burning with silent rage. That evening, as the orange sun melted into the horizon, Mama Loma called them to help prepare food. Zola laughed softly while peeling cassava, humming an old village song about peace and sisterhood. Tandy watched her, her expression dark. When their mother stepped out to fetch water, Tandy whispered to herself, "They love you because of your beauty. Let us see how they treat you when it is gone." The crickets began to sing. The fire crackled in the center of the hut, and the first stars appeared above the village. Zola smiled, unaware that her sister's heart was no longer filled with love, but with something cruel and heavy. Mama Loma sensed a storm in her daughter's silence, but she thought it was only a quarrel that time would heal. She did not know that this jealousy, small as a spark, was growing into fire. That night, Tandy lay awake, staring at the moon through the cracks of the thatched roof. "Why must she shine brighter than me?" she whispered. The wind outside rustled through the tall grass as if warning her, but her thoughts were already poisoned. By dawn, the girl who once envied her sister had turned into someone else, entirely someone who would soon do the unthinkable. The morning sun rose over Indaloo with a golden glare, but inside Mama Loma's hut, shadows of hatred were already moving. Tandy had spent the night twisting in her mat, replaying every moment she had been compared to her sister. Every smile, every compliment, every gesture that praised Zola and left her forgotten. Her envy had now become madness, an uncontrollable hunger to destroy what she could not become. Mama Loma had gone early to the market to sell woven mats, leaving her daughters alone. The silence inside the hut was heavy, broken only by the soft bubbling of water in the clay pot over the fire. Zola was humming a cheerful tune, her voice gentle like the morning breeze, as she arranged palm leaves to cover the food basket. Tandy watched her quietly, her eyes dark, her heart pounding like a drum of war. "Zola," she said, forcing a smile, "come help me lift this pot. It's too heavy for me." Zola turned with her usual kindness, stepping toward the fire without suspicion, her hands reaching out in love. In that instant, time itself seemed to hold its breath. Tandy's hand trembled on the pot's handle, her mind screaming against her heart. But the poison of envy had already drowned her soul. With a sudden cry, she lifted the pot and flung the boiling water toward her sister's face. A horrifying scream tore through the morning air, echoing through the trees and startling the birds from their nests. Zola fell backward, clutching her face, the steaming water burning her skin, her tears mixing with pain and smoke. The air filled with the smell of scorched flesh and sorrow. Tandy froze, the pot slipping from her hands and crashing to the floor. For a long moment, she stared in disbelief, her heart pounding so loud she could hear nothing else. Then, realizing what she had done, she stumbled backward and ran outside, trembling, her breath broken by panic. Villagers turned as they saw her running, her clothes wet, her eyes wild. Inside the hut, Zola lay shaking on the ground, whispering her sister's name, her beauty melting away beneath the cruel touch of fire. When Mama Loma returned from the market and saw the horror before her, she dropped her basket, her heart breaking with a soundless scream. She fell to her knees beside her younger daughter, her tears falling on Zola's burnt face. "Oh, my child," she cried, "what evil has done this?" But Tandy stood at the doorway, silent, her body shaking, her eyes filled with terror and regret. "I didn't mean," she whispered, her voice fading as Mama Loma turned toward her. "You have cursed your own blood," Mama Loma said with trembling lips. "May the spirits judge you as they see fit." That night, the once joyful hut became a house of sorrow. The villagers gathered outside, murmuring prayers and shaking their heads in disbelief. Zola's beauty, once the pride of Endeloo, had been destroyed, leaving behind scars that told a tale of cruelty and envy. In the darkness, Tandy sat alone by the river, staring into the water. The reflection that stared back at her no longer looked like her. On it was twisted, ugly, and hollow. "What have I done?" she whispered, but the river gave no answer, only the sound of rushing water, as if the spirits themselves were weeping for what had been lost. Silence, after the terrible act, and the once cheerful hut of Mama Loma became a place of quiet mourning. Zola lay on her mat, her face bandaged with leaves soaked in river herbs, her breath slow, her voice gone soft and broken. The burns had changed her forever. Her skin was scarred, her beauty gone, her confidence vanished like mist before the morning sun. She no longer sang, no longer walked to the river, no longer smiled. The children who used to run to her door with laughter now whispered cruel things outside the hut, calling her the cursed one and running away, giggling. Every mirror was gone from the house. Even the shiny gourds had been hidden away because Zola couldn't bear to see what she had become. Tandy, on the other hand, lived like a ghost among the living. Her mother refused to speak to her, except for short, cold words, and wherever she went, people turned their faces. She had thought her jealousy would bring her peace, that by destroying her sister's beauty, she would finally shine, but instead, she had burned her own soul. Guilt followed her like a shadow. At night, she would wake to the echo of Zola's scream ringing in her ears, and she would run outside, gasping for air, staring at the moonlit river that had once reflected her sister's glowing face. Sometimes she thought she saw shapes in the water, glimmers of light that seemed to move like eyes watching her. The villagers whispered that the river spirits were angry, that the sacred waters had seen everything, and that punishment was coming. Meanwhile, inside the hut, Mama Loma wept every evening. "My daughters were my joy," she whispered, "and now they are my sorrow." But even through her pain, she saw that Zola's spirit was still kind. One night, Zola, her voice hoarse and fragile, spoke softly to her mother. "Do not cry for me, Mama. My beauty was never meant to stay. The river gave it, and the river has taken it back." Mama Loma covered her face and wept harder, for she could not understand such forgiveness. Zola could not bear to see the world any more. When dawn came, she would pull her shawl tightly around her face and sit in the corner of the hut where the sunlight could not reach. People began calling her the girl who hid from the sun. But though her face was hidden, her heart began to grow brighter in ways no one could see. She prayed every night to the river spirits for strength, not revenge. "Let my pain have meaning," she whispered to the wind. And one night, as she sat alone by the firelight, she heard a gentle voice outside, a voice that seemed to come from the water itself. "Zola," it called, soft as a lullaby. "Do not hide, for beauty lives where kindness dwells." She stepped outside, trembling, her face half covered, and looked toward the river. The moon was high, and the water shimmered like liquid silver. She moved closer, and as she looked into the rippling surface, she gasped. Her reflection was not as it was in the world. It was whole, beautiful, untouched. The river seemed to glow beneath her gaze, whispering, "Your scars are not your shame, child. They are the proof of your heart." Tears fell from her eyes, and for the first time since that terrible morning, she smiled not for how she looked, but for who she had become. In that moment, Zola understood that beauty could be burned from the skin, but not from the soul. And deep beneath the surface of the river, unseen, the spirits of the ancestors stirred, watching her with pride, for her light had survived the darkness. The river Kunu had always been calm, a place of laughter and life. But ever since the day Tandy's rage scarred her sister, its waters began to darken. The villagers whispered that the spirits were no longer at peace, that the sacred current that once blessed their crops now carried sorrow instead. Weeks turned into months, and strange things began to happen in Indelu. The rains came late, the ground cracked with thirst, and the fish that once filled the river nets disappeared. "The river is angry," said the elders, shaking their heads. "Someone has brought sin upon us." In her small hut, Tandy's guilt grew like rot in her bones. Her once bright eyes had dulled, her laughter was gone, and her body had grown thin. She could not escape the memory of Zola's screams, nor the smell of burning flesh that haunted her dreams. Every time she passed the river, she felt something watching her from beneath the surface, eyes that shimmered like fireflies, whispering her name in the night wind. One evening, when the moon hung low and red above the treetops, she heard voices again. "Tandy," they hissed, "you have spilled pain upon the innocent." She covered her ears and ran, but the whispers followed her like echoes from another world. That night, the wind howled through the village, tearing roofs and shaking trees. Water flooded the edge of Mama Loma's hut, carrying away baskets and pots, and the people ran to the hills in fear. The next morning, when the storm passed, the ground was wet with silence. The elders gathered at the riverbank, and what they found made their hearts tremble. Tandy sat alone at the edge of the water, her hair tangled, her eyes hollow, her skin pale as ash. She had not slept nor eaten for days. "Forgive me," she cried to the flowing water. "Take what is left of me, but spare my soul." Her voice broke, her tears mixing with the muddy waves. "I have wronged my blood. I have shamed my mother. I have burned what was blessed." the river swelled, rising like a beast, the current twisting and roaring as though answering her. The villagers watched in awe as a sudden gust of cold wind swept across the shore. "The spirits are here," one whispered. "They have come for her." Tandy's body shook as she fell to her knees. "Please," she begged, "let me make it right." But the river had no mercy. A blinding light flashed across the water, and in an instant she was gone, swallowed whole by the current. Only her footprints remained on the wet ground, leading into the river and ending where the water met the shore. The people of Endeloo stood in stunned silence. Mama Loma collapsed to her knees, her hands clutching the earth, her wails echoing through the valley. "My daughters," she cried, "one burned, one lost, what have the spirits done?" But deep within the rushing water, a quiet calm returned. The next morning, the river glimmered clear again. The fish returned to the nets, and the birds sang as though peace had been restored. The elders gathered and said, "The river spirits have taken their due. The curse has been lifted." Yet Mama Loma's eyes carried the weight of loss forever. For though balance had returned to the land, her family had paid the price with blood, tears, and pain that could never be washed away. Years passed since that cursed night when the river claimed Tandy, and though peace had returned to Endeloo, the village was never quite the same. The story of the two sisters became a whisper on the wind, told by mothers to their daughters as a warning against envy and hate. Mama Loma grew old with sorrow in her heart, her hair silver like the morning mist, her eyes tired from too many tears. Yet she still found strength in the one daughter who remained beside her, Zola. The girl once burned, now the woman who healed others. Though her face bore scars that never faded, her spirit shone brighter than ever. She learned the secrets of healing from the village elders and the whispers of the river. Her hands, once delicate and soft, now carried the power to soothe pain, to mend wounds, to calm hearts. When the sick came to her hut, she greeted them with a smile that warmed even the coldest souls. "Beauty," she would say, "is not what the eyes see, but what the heart gives." Soon, people from neighboring villages began visiting her, bringing gifts of fruit and beads, not because of how she looked, but because of the peace she carried within. Even the children who once mocked her scars now sat by her fire, listening to her stories, their eyes wide with wonder. She taught them about kindness, about forgiveness, about how envy can destroy what love builds. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the river shimmered with gold, Zola walked to the water's edge. The wind brushed against her face, and she closed her eyes, feeling the cool air kiss her scars. "You have grown strong," a voice whispered, soft, familiar, like a mother's lullaby. She opened her eyes, and before her stood a vision of light, the spirits of the river, glowing and graceful, rising from the water like mist. "You forgave when others would have cursed," they said. "Your heart has healed the land. The curse has ended." Zola's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "I am no longer angry," she said softly. "My pain taught me love." The spirits circled her gently, and the water around her began to glow brighter and brighter until it reflected her image. Not the scarred face the world saw, but the pure beauty that once was and always had been. She saw herself as she truly was, kind, radiant, and whole. Mama Loma, watching from the shore, gasped as the light surrounded her daughter like a halo. The villagers gathered, falling to their knees in awe, as the river sang with a voice like thunder and rain. "The child of the river has been restored," the elders whispered. When the light faded, Zola stood smiling, her heart full, her scars still there, but no longer heavy with pain. She turned to her mother and said, "Now I understand, Mama. Beauty fades, but goodness remains forever." The river flowed calmly once more, its water clear, its sound gentle like laughter. The land blossomed again, and peace returned to Nendaloo that night. As the moon rose high, the villagers danced by the riverbank, celebrating not beauty, not sorrow, but the return of balance. And from that day on, when people spoke of Zola, they did not speak of her scars or her past, but of her courage, the girl who was burned by envy, yet healed the world with love. Her name became a prayer whispered by mothers, a blessing spoken by travelers, and a song carried by the wind, a song that reminded everyone that true beauty, once born from the heart, can never be destroyed, not even by fire.